February 17, 2026. An FBI analyst reviewing routine system logs on DCS 3000. Standard morning work inside a system built to track every active counterintelligence target on American soil. The entries are not routine. Something has accessed the system from outside the expected network architecture. No forced entry, no broken perimeter, just an access signature that does not belong in a familiar pattern. The FBI watches spies for a living. Someone was watching the FBI. The system is DCS 3000, codename Red Hook. Its breach has been formally designated a FISMA major incident, the highest civilian cybersecurity classification the federal government issues. You haven't heard of it. That was the point. To understand what was breached, you first need to understand what was built and who it was built to watch. DCS 3000 is the FBI's digital collection system network, the operational hub through which federal agents manage every court-authorized surveillance operation active on American soil. It centralizes phone numbers under active wiretap. It holds pen register returns, the metadata of court-authorized call monitoring, showing who called whom and when. It stores trap and trace authorizations, FISA warrant metadata, the operational records of every active domestic counterintelligence case. It is the circulation system of American counterintelligence, not the investigations themselves, but the infrastructure that connects them all and maps every target the FBI is currently authorized to watch. Most Americans have never heard of it. That invisibility is not an oversight. It is a design feature. How would anyone outside the FBI know this system existed, let alone decide to make it a target? Salt Typhoon is a Chinese state-linked cyber espionage group with a documented, escalating campaign against American intelligence infrastructure. The campaign did not begin with the FBI. In 2024, operators assessed to be affiliated with Salt Typhoon breached all 3 major U.S. cell carriers, accessing the lawful intercept infrastructure inside those networks, reaching presidential campaign communications in the process. In December 2025, House committees on China, Foreign Affairs, Intelligence, and Armed Services were breached. In February 2026, DCS 3000, each step more audacious, each step closer to the center. 3 targets, 3 years. One recurring pattern: the U.S. government took 3 breaches to name. What connects all 3 targets isn't China's ambition. It's the thing all 3 had in common. Investigators believe the FBI's entry point was a commercial ISP vendor, providing network services to the Bureau. The vendor's own infrastructure was compromised, and that established trust relationship became the attack surface. The same mechanism as solar winds, the same structural logic as the 2024 telecom campaign. The adversary didn't break through the FBI's front door. They walked through the vendor's side entrance using a key the FBI had issued. The FBI's perimeter security was irrelevant because the attack never touched the perimeter. The FBI's front door was locked. The side entrance belonged to someone else. DCS 3000 didn't just log who the FBI was watching. It logged the legal authority under which each target was monitored, the surveillance methods in use, the court authorizations in place, and the operational metadata of every active counterintelligence case. To any external reader, that architecture created something the FBI's designers never anticipated: a 2-sided ledger, a map of American surveillance targets that was, read from the other direction, a confirmation list of foreign intelligence assets the United States had already identified and was actively tracking. What came next was not the failure of a firewall. It was the failure of a philosophy. On February 17th, FBI cybersecurity analysts detected anomalous access patterns in the DCS 3000 logs. Internal investigation launched. System isolated where possible. Containment protocols activated. The FBI would later state it had quickly leveraged all technical capabilities to remediate the incident. Detection is not prevention. A breach can be discovered in minutes and still represent months of prior access. The timestamp on the log anomaly was February 17th. The timestamp on the first unauthorized entry is still unknown. The anomaly was found in minutes. What it had already read could not be unfound. What DCS 3000 held and what was potentially read was not the content of intercepted calls. This is a distinction that matters more than almost anything else about this story. Call content can be encrypted. The surveillance target list cannot be hidden from the agency managing the surveillance. Phone numbers under active wiretap, pen register returns, who called whom and when, trap and trace authorizations, the full operational metadata of active FBI counterintelligence cases. For a foreign intelligence service, that is not an intelligence win. It is something closer to a command briefing. The FBI's counterintelligence chessboard, every piece position, every active investigation, was potentially visible. The practical consequence, according to expert analysis, every Chinese intelligence operative in the United States whose phone number appeared on the FBI's surveillance list now potentially knows they've been identified. Assets can be relocated before arrest. Double agents recalled before their exposure is confirmed. Investigation threads that took years of construction severed in hours. Security analyst John Fokker of Trellix was direct. If they're conducting any investigations on U.S. soil, it can give them a heads up of who they need to cut ties with. FBI counterintelligence agents who spent years building surveillance networks around specific Chinese operatives may have had those networks rendered inoperable before a single arrest was made. The damage isn't data. The damage is every investigation that will never close. The FBI formally classified the breach as a FISMA major incident, a designation issued only a handful of times per year across all federal agencies combined. The criteria are specific. Personal identifying information of protected individuals had been compromised. Demonstrable harm to national security had been established. Mandatory congressional notification within 7 days triggered. The FBI notified Congress in early April 2026. The public learned on April 2nd. Former FBI cyber official Cynthia Kaiser confirmed the rarity. Major incident designations carry mandatory consequences that cannot be managed quietly once the threshold is crossed. Director Kash Patel had described China as a continuing thorn in the side of the U.S. intelligence community. The thorn had now reached the root. The designation was rare. The pattern behind it was not. The 2024 Salt Typhoon telecom campaign targeted lawful intercept infrastructure inside commercial carriers, the technical architecture that gives the FBI its court-ordered wiretapping capability within those networks. The 2026 breach targeted DCS 3000, the management system above that infrastructure, which coordinates and records all lawful intercept operations at the federal level. Both attacks targeted the same category, the legal mechanism through which the United States government surveils its adversaries. This is not opportunistic hacking. This is a strategic doctrine, the deliberate, repeated targeting of Western surveillance architecture as the highest value intelligence objective available to a foreign power. Beijing is not trying to read specific communications. Beijing is trying to read the system that decides which communications get read. That distinction changes everything about how this campaign should be understood. Here's what the discovery reports and expert analysis suggest, and what has not yet been said clearly. When investigators assess that China read the FBI's DCS 3000 surveillance list, they are also describing a moment when Beijing read a map of its own exposed assets. The phone numbers on that list belonged, in many cases, to Chinese intelligence operatives the FBI had been monitoring. Beijing accessing that list meant Beijing learning which of its US-based agents had been identified, which needed to be recalled before arrest, cut before exposure, warned before the handcuffs arrived. The breach was a two-sided revelation. The FBI lost its counterintelligence picture. China gained simultaneously a confirmation of which of its own people had been compromised. Intelligence China could not have obtained any other way. The watchers and the watched were reading the same ledger, from opposite ends. The breach wasn't just what Beijing learned about the FBI, it was what Beijing learned about itself. As of April 2026, no formal U.S. government attribution has been publicly issued. China formally denies involvement. The specific ISP vendor has not been named. The full scope of what was exfiltrated is unknown. Whether February 17th was the moment of first access or the moment of detection after an extended dwell period remains under investigation. The FBI has stated the breach was contained. Contained is not the same as remediated. Remediated is not the same as understood. Salt Typhoon, the FBI itself reported, is still very, very much ongoing. The story isn't over. It is simply the moment in the story where the camera holds on the open door. The lesson from this breach is not that the FBI needs better firewalls. The lesson is that the architecture of lawful intercept is built on vendor trust as a foundational design choice. And vendor trust is the one attack surface that perimeter security cannot address. In 2020, the SolarWinds attack exploited a trusted software update relationship to reach 9 federal agencies simultaneously. In 2024, Salt Typhoon exploited trusted ISP relationships inside carrier networks. In 2026, the FBI breach exploited a trusted commercial ISP vendor. The same structural vulnerability, 3 different organizations, 3 different incidents, possibly 1 campaign. This is not a streak of bad luck. It is a repeating consequence of a single design philosophy. When critical infrastructure is built on shared trust relationships, it inherits every vulnerability of every trusted party simultaneously. There is a question older than DCS 3000, older than the FBI, older than lawful intercept as a legal concept. Juvenal asked it 2,000 years ago, Quis custodiet ipsos custodes? Who watches the watchers? The answer the United States chose was other parts of the United States government, classified oversight mechanisms, FISA courts in near total secrecy, Inspector General reports that arrive years after the events they describe. The answer China chose was different. China built a 3-year campaign to read the watcher's map directly, and in February 2026, by all available assessment, it did. The system designed to see everything had a structural blind spot embedded in its design from the beginning. It modeled every threat as an adversary trying to hide. It never seriously modeled the adversary trying to read. After this, that assumption is no longer available. Understanding that is how this story permanently changes the way you see surveillance, infrastructure, and the architecture of power.